I think one of the most common questions I get is, what can I do to protect myself in a marriage, whether they're in a marriage now or whether they're looking to get into a marriage. And I always tell them, like, look, there is only so much the law can do for you. It's just what it is. Your best protection is to marry the right person in the first place. And I realize that's a lot harder to implement in action than to talk about. However, I do think that there is an element of people not taking the time to suss out the other person. I think people fall in love a bit too easily, especially when they're younger and they've got the rose-colored glasses on. I mean, how many stories do we know of, oh my God, he was great when we were dating, but as soon as we got married, he was a different person. It's a very, very common story. And if nothing else, you know what? Get a prenup. Seriously. Here's the thing about, marrying a potential abuser and getting a prenup. People think like the value of a prenup is what you end up writing on the agreement, which it is valuable, obviously. But in my opinion, the real value in getting a prenup is the process of talking about this with your spouse and finding out really when it comes down to it, like what kind of person are you, right? Like I'll just tell a quick story to drive this point home, which is, I had a client who, was engaged, was going to get married, and she was living with currently her fiancé. The fiancé had 2 kids of his own, so she was home. She was about to quit her job, and she was going to raise these 2 children. And we proceeded to try and get a prenup done. And the other side had proposed in an agreement that while she's married to him and living in his house, caring for his 2 young children, that she would have to pay rent to him and that she would get no support, no property, no nothing in the event of a divorce. And so you can imagine the type of conversation that people were having once that agreement came through, which was, what the hell are you talking about, right?
Wow.
And that was not the kind of person that she thought she was marrying, right? And so it's very, very easy when you're in the dating stage to sort of play this character, I think, that is trying to woo you and love bomb you and what have you. But like, again, when push comes to shove and like when things get real, as in you're about to put ink on paper that says, in the event of a divorce, legally, this is what I'm going to do for you. This is what's going to happen. Like they can't lie anymore, right? And so, and on the flip side of that, I have many other really happy, just couples who decide to get a prenup and they're like even more generous than I would want them to be. I'm like, legally, you don't have to be like this generous, but they're like, no, but like she's going to be my wife or he's going to be my husband. Like I want them to be supported and I want them to feel like they're getting an equitable outcome out of this relationship. And so like, I want to do it. Like that also exists. And if that's the case, like good on you, like I can't be happier for you. Right. But like, seriously, I think people underestimate the value, or they don't quite realize that the real value in getting a prenup is not just what you end up putting on the agreement, but the process in and of itself. And you get to really see what the other person's made of.
Yeah. I feel like the takeaway from that little bit there is divorce lawyer says prenups are going to help you determine what kind of person, because you can't hide anymore. You can't lie. Oh, baby, I'll take care of you. Don't worry. Oh, we're never going to get divorced. But if we do, I'm just curious, what would this actually look like? I think more people, like what I've learned over the last 5 years working in the domestic violence realm and even just talking to people about how you exit these relationships, I sing the praises of prenups left, right, and center. And when I was in my 20s, I was always kind of like, prenups are so icky. Who wants to talk about divorce while you're getting married? And now I see it as that's exactly when you should be talking about those things. But if you make it a legal conversation, there's no, baby, I love you, I'll take care of you. Show me. Write that down. I love that.
Exactly. Yeah.
You'll pull out the abusers right there that are like, okay, yeah, I'll take care of you here. You can have spousal support for 6 months. Yeah. And then you get nothing. You'll expose them. You'll expose them.
Yeah.
I have a little part of this podcast called Real Talk from the comments. You probably get all kinds of comments on social media. Me too.
A lot.
A lot. Yes. And, I see amazing comments and I see like the worst of the worst comments. So I'm going to read you 2 comments relating to this topic of divorce. And I just want to hear your thoughts. So one of the comments, of course, over 70% of divorces are filed by women. They get everything out of it. Alimony, child support, the house, the kids. Well, the man's life gets ruined and he has to pay for her hair and nails. Brutal.
Again, very, very well. I can understand why someone might feel that way. Like subjectively, I get it. But there are consequences to everyone's actions, let's say. And one of my favorite phrases is, there's no such thing as a free lunch, and that applies to literally anything. And, if you're a person who benefited from the marriage in some way, and you might not like to acknowledge that you benefited from the marriage, but you definitely have. And there's a price to pay for that. That's not to say that everything's transactional, but that's just the way life works. And that same thing goes for the other person, like the price they pay for the hair and nails, I suppose, to use that example, post-divorce, is that you gave up your independence probably during your marriage. You know what I mean? Like again, there's no such thing as a free lunch. And I think people will be better served to realize that.
Yeah. One thing that always kind of surprises me when men are like, oh, and I have to pay alimony, which again is paid in less than 10%. So I just want to flip that. 90% of divorces, there's no alimony typically being paid. I believe these stats, I've looked into them, I've seen all the sources. But the point is that if it's being paid, there's a reason. And we all know where we get married and where we live and all the jurisdictions. So if you really are so concerned about if in the event of a divorce that she's going to get alimony, get her to sign a prenup before the marriage. Tell her, be honest and upfront before the marriage and say, if we ever split up, even though I expect that you are a stay-at-home parent, that I want you to have nothing in divorce. Be honest.
Also, you gotta pick up your and on beyond that, you have to arrange your life in a way. You arrange your marriage in a way that makes it very, very obvious that, what? It wasn't like one person was sacrificing themselves for the other person. And that means nowadays, like double income household is probably more common than not. And so, when you come home as a man, and your wife also works, by the way, do the dishes, take care of the children, do the laundry. Like you partake in the things that typically women do that entitles them to spousal support if you're so concerned, right?
Yeah. But you also might avoid divorce by doing that, by the way.
And that's exactly it, right? It's like, I think, I believe part of the reason why the divorce rate is so high and why relationships fail is because we overemphasize the moment in which we get married and how that is a moment beginning the forever happily ever after from that point on. And people take for granted the relationship and the marriage that they are in. And as soon as somebody takes something for granted, they are not going to give it the care and the attention that it deserves. And if in your mind, because you said I do at the altar, that the other person, no matter what you do, is not going to leave you, they'll probably leave you because you're not going to treat them right. And so, and that's the thing about prenups too. It's like, yeah, you think that talking about a divorce is going to make you get a divorce. That's such a faulty logic, right? In fact, I would argue if you're talking about the potential that you might get divorced and what's going to happen in the event of a divorce, you are going to acknowledge the possibility that it might happen, and therefore you're going to put in the requisite care to make sure it doesn't happen, right? Like the other person, like for both people, like another human being saying to you, I'm going to commit myself to you, is not something that comes for free, right? Yeah. It's a huge, huge sacrifice and commitment from the other person that you have to respect, and there needs to be a reciprocal effort for it to work. And I think people forget that, or people were never taught that.
Yeah, I absolutely think that. I think, abusive people exploit that. They don't want to have these conversations about getting yourself organized. The amount of people that are like, how did you, in comment sections, how are these women getting married, never having had these conversations? You'd be surprised how many people, men and women, are not having these conversations. And I honestly, my new advice, I'll quote you on this, but I really feel like prenups are going to expose the liars. More women should be asking for prenups, not because they're trying to get money, right? But just sort of like suss out what kind of person you are.
Put your money where your mouth is,
Yeah, absolutely.